Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for the Making Progress channel, which this video is on. Guess what else would it be for? Here we go. This is video number 12, Making Sense on Gun Control. File under Controversial Issues. By golly. Today, we will chat about why we're chatting about gun control. I thought this was a progress channel. What we all want, pretty close to universally. Talk about some unrealistic views on gun control that are very, very prevalent, and people have a lot of feelings when they talk about them. We will talk about more promising directions on gun control that seem to be maybe better than worse ideas. And then we'll talk about how to reason on similar issues and what you can expect in the future from myself and this channel in regard to issues similar to this one. So you say, hold on a second, I thought this channel was going to be about AI and philosophy and how to become a better person. It's about all forms of progress. And gun control done better than worse is definitely something that can progress. It's better to have gun control that is more effective than gun control that is less effective, no matter what you think about gun control. And also it's a juicy issue, and it's going to get us clicks and YouTube gold. Isn't that right, Scott, the video guy? Gold. Now, this whole discussion will be centered around the gun situation in the United States of America. If you are European, for example, and you have an opinion on legal gun ownership, come live in Chicago for a while and then have an opinion. I'm kidding, sort of. But, typically when I have engaged on gun control on social media, a lot of Europeans come in and go, oh, this is crazy, like American problem, and I can't believe that you animals still get to have gun. I mean, we do not have this problem in Sweden or the Netherlands in like a generation, so like clean up your streets and get rid of the guns. Which is actually like a fairly decent point. Guns absolutely help people kill people easier. But the issue is more complicated than that. So if you are interested in discussing gun control in the United States, it pays to be familiar with some of the nuances on why some of the more straightforward approaches don't exactly work as intended. And that's one of the things we'll cover in this conversation. So, what do we all want? There are two groups of people on gun control, precisely two, I'm kidding, two ends of a spectrum. There are folks who value guns and a couple of the things that guns allow them to do. First, guns have good general utility for shooting sports, for hunting, things like that. Guns have protective effects. For example, if you happen to be a little bit left-leaning, which is totally cool, you may be in the position of thinking that guns are very bad and they should all be illegal. And I hear you. There's lots of good thinking around that. But gun rights and the ability to have a gun is currently one of the only things that pretty close to entirely levels the playing field on female sexual assault. If I'm a female and I'm alone and I have just my purse on me and I have a dress and a coat and I'm walking and there's a group of men walking towards me, it's the inner city, it's dark, man, whatever those guys want, I got it coming. And they may want some very, very unkind things to me. But if I'm strapped, and they know I'm strapped, nobody feels like the first person or any person to get shot in an altercation. So they're going to give me a level of respect and reverence that they would accord to any other person that is not 120 pounds and female and off on her own in a city she doesn't know. So guns absolutely have enormous protective effects, and they mean that no other kind of violence is really possible to you anymore. You can't intimidate somebody with a gun the same way. You can't commit physical violence with your bare hands or a weapon anymore. You can't force them to come with you or do unkind things to them in sexual ways, etc. Because if they have a gun, they are treated as anyone else with a gun, which is to say someone not to mess with. And that's a really, really big deal. That's a huge beneficial effect to having the right to bear arms. And of course, there are the liberty-promoting effects of gun ownership, whereby it's really hard to conquer a nation in which half of all the citizens have guns. Really, really, really hard. Even with really modern weaponry, you just have to like plow everything under. And that's not really much of a conquering as it is a genocide. And if a country wants to genocide you, they're just going to drop a bunch of bombs anyway. They don't have to go in. So it makes your government have more reverence for the citizenry. and it makes other governments have more reverence for citizenry. So definitely has its advantages. Now, some of us love guns for that reason, and some of us hate guns for different reasons, but also entirely understandable ones. Guns absolutely magnify our ability to do harm to others. And if you happen to be a crazy person and want to do a lot of harm, guns are a real easy way to express your emotions in a way that results in the permanent alteration of people's lives, many times making those lives cease. So guns are like evil magnifiers. And gee whiz, that's really bad. It does not take a rocket scientist to figure that out. But, so there's lots of space between those two views. However, I think pretty much all of us want less violent crime. And less gun crime is a subcategory of that. I've never spoken to a single legal registered gun owner, no matter how red his MAGA hat was or how pro-Republican and Trump psycho he was, who was for violent crime. I've never spoken to a purple-haired leftist who was for violent crime in any way that you could recognize as you really do think crime is a good idea. Most people don't think that way. Gunpoint robbery is bad, hospitalizations from shootings are bad, and of course killing is bad. So we really have to ask ourselves the question is, how do we construct, or rather reconstruct, gun policy in the United States, gun control policy in the United States, to preserve some of the considerations that some people want as much as possible, and reduce as much as possible, at least with low-hanging fruit ways, the killing that occurs from guns and all the gun violence and the hospitalizations and all this other stuff. So we can answer some of those questions. So we're going to try to come up with policy proposals that try to preserve as much liberty as possible and try to reduce the number of dangerous people that have access to guns in order to reduce the degree of gun crimes as much as possible. Pretty open and shut case. We can do this. Now, if you're not big on liberty, I totally feel you, then this discussion is going to leave you saying, look, we should just still get rid of all guns. And I do have something to say about that in some of this presentation. But if you do have at least a tacit understanding of the value of liberty and maybe guns have some utility, you may appreciate this discussion. This discussion is not my final word on gun control. It's just some ideas. And I think the best thing to get out of this is kind of the low-hanging fruit of stuff we should all be agreeing on as a good idea for policy, and that if people debate, they're usually wrong about, and we can make some sense to them. So before we get into what I think is a good idea, let's take a look at some common ideas that you'll hear in almost any time you post on social media about gun control. You're going to get 90% of your comments are going to be referencing these ideas, and they are just really, really bad ideas about guns, crime, and gun control that are empirically false, and the reasoning is bad too. So let's talk about them. I'm going to list out all 6 of them one by one, and then I'm going to go through and describe why they're bad. So first, the list. Don't start commenting just yet. Wait till I describe them just a bit. So the first bad idea or unrealistic view on gun control is that legal gun owners are a big problem. The second is that assault rifles are a big deal. The third is that gun crime is hard to narrow down to individuals or tight-knit groups, as that anyone can commit gun crime at roughly the same rate. Number 4 is that we can get all the guns to just go away. That would be pretty neat, but may not be possible. We'll see why. Number 5 is that any gun registration is totalitarian. So like MAGA hat Republicans think is so one gun is removed by the government and that's it. Chaos, total war. We have a robot president that just that's it. We might as well be in communist China. That's an insane exaggeration. It almost never comes true. And number 6 is school shootings are the tip of the spear of the gun control issue. And we should really use school shootings as a way to talk about how gun control should work. These are all pretty close to very wrong. And now I will describe why. So first, the idea that legal gun owners are a big problem. Legal gun owners, people who purchase a gun that is registered and don't have any prior felony convictions, account for a very, very small fraction of gun crime. And if you make laws constraining already legal gun owners, your impact on gun crime is really, really bad because you're talking to the wrong group. It's like if you wanted to do an anti-gang initiative and you went over to the nursing home and you talk to a group of 5 old ladies that sit there every, Monday through Friday, 12 to 1 p.m., they sit outside, and some in wheelchairs, some in regular chairs, and they just take in the nature. And you're like, ladies, I'm here to talk to you about gang crime. Some of you look like you're in a gang already. Was this your post? How many of you got a gat strapped on you? And they're going to be like, what? You are talking to the wrong group of people. The percent of old people in nursing homes that commit to gang crime is very tiny. Just the same way, a bit exaggerated, but in a very similar relationship, legal gun owners commit very, very few gun crimes. So if you're saying, hey, we need to take the laws on legal gun ownership and tighten them even more to reduce legal gun ownership or make it otherwise more difficult, you are targeting the very wrongest possible demographic you could be. The only wrongest demographic would be people that don't have guns, don't intend to buy guns, and are not felons or criminally prone people. They're just like, oh, look, I'm not even getting a gun. Just short of that is people who have guns but are all super, super within the law. Most gun crimes are committed by illegal gun owners who already don't care about laws. And most of those people, I'll get to this point again in a little bit, have very, very long criminal records already. They're not accidental. Not everyone has the same chance of taking a gun and using it to hurt other people. In addition, there is a considerable body of evidence that in a population of illegal gun owners, legal gun ownership actually leads to a net reduction in crime, because illegal gun owners start to have to think, well, shit, I could rob that person, but they might have a gun on them. I'm not getting shot, fuck that. Defensive use of weaponry is really, really high, and deterrent use of weaponry is also really, really high. There is a common understanding in folks that commit lots of crimes, typically living in, we'll say some combination of inner city crap hole ghetto and trailer park that's in some part of the suburbs or country. A lot of those folks don't go into the country to go rob people or, do burglaries and stuff. Because a lot of them, if you talk to them, be like, why don't you drive out there, 20 miles, you just like go into a house and just hit someone with a shotgun and take all their stuff. A lot of them will say like, those people have guns, man. Deterrence is a big deal and it does work. So legal gun owners, probably the last folks we're really, really super concerned with here, if we want to actually reduce gun crime. Number 2, assault rifles are a big deal. First of all, this has to be a very clear point. In military terminology, there's not really such a thing as an assault rifle. It's kind of a Hollywood term, to be completely honest. There are many different kinds of weapons. There are rifles, there are carbines, and the list goes on, and their rate of fire and their precision is like a normal distribution. Huge spectrum of abilities. There are differences in weapon lethality, but as long as we're not talking about military-grade belt-fed machine guns, the biggest difference in lethality doesn't stem from the gun you're actually using in a criminal scenario. It stems from 3 other things. Intent is thing number 1. Like if you're trying to kill some people, that makes you dangerous with pretty much any gun. Very, very big liability. Number 2 is training. If you have trained well with your weapon and you can put shots on target relatively reliably, that's a real big problem. There are gunfights in the ghetto where nobody gets shot because everyone's so goddamn poorly trained with their weapon. I don't think they ever train with their weapon, that nobody gets killed. Now, tons of people get killed otherwise, but precision is a big deal. And lastly, modifications. If you have a weapon that doesn't even have select fire, single shot only, but is a properly kitted out carbine, like an M4gery of some kind, if you have a good red dot sight or a good reticle sight, or even some kind of decent scope, and your training is good and your intent is good, you are a very, very lethal person. But even if you have an AK-47 on full auto, you may not be so lethal if, first of all, you have no intent, and then you're not lethal at all. The training is if you haven't done it, an AK just turns off and to the left, and then you probably drop it and go, holy shit, that was a lot of kick. I wasn't planning on that. And modifications, shooting off iron sights in an AK is difficult to hit damn near anything, especially on full auto. So a lot of times when people say like we have to ban assault rifles, the next question to ask them is what exactly does an assault rifle? They almost certainly don't know. Now they could start to ban various modifications, and that gets into the discussion of who's using these modifications. Are school shooters using high-tech mods and Picatinny rail mods? No. Are people who are shooting each other to death in the inner city and in the trailer park, are they using that shit? Also no. Who's using that stuff? Tactical people and hunters and stuff? Well, they kill anyone. So it becomes a thing where it's politically very convenient to say these kinds of guns are the problem, but in reality that does almost no solving of a problem at great political expense. And because like all resources, political resources are finite, and the public's throughput for how much gun stuff they can handle in politics is also finite, you gotta treat what the approach you're gonna take as with a little bit of diligence and think, okay, we do have a political will to do something about guns. Where can we best put this political will to get the only thing that matters to change? Gun crime to go down. That's it. And it sure as shit is not banning assault rifles, quote unquote, again, with which there is really no such thing. Number 3, people will say that gun crime is hard to narrow down to individuals or tight-knit groups. This couldn't be further from the truth. It is a matter of fact very close to the opposite of the truth. The vast majority of gun crimes are committed by 3 types of people, and one of them is actually a subcategory of another, so it's really just 2. Group 1 is criminals with long records of both nonviolent and violent crime. Almost all gun crime is committed by people with numerous other offenses, usually stretching back to their early or mid-teenage years. It is preposterously rare that someone commits their first crime as a violent gun crime. And I know there's tons of stuff in Hollywood where that happens, but it is preposterously rare. It does occur, but if you're targeting rare events with your policy, you're going to get a reduction in rare events if it works, and then nobody's going to notice because there's basically nothing to notice, or statistically very close to nothing to notice. But the reality is that most people that commit gun crimes start with misdemeanors, then they get into all sorts of other trouble, eventually felonies, and then like on their 7th to 10th arrest or something, they are found in possession of an illegal gun, paroled, and then they shoot someone with that illegal gun a year and a half later. That is almost always how it happens. So most of the people that commit gun crimes are already criminals before they've ever seen a gun or gotten their hands on one, or definitely have been popped for having a gun. Subcategory of that are gang members. Gang members are responsible for the hugest fraction of all gun crime in the United States, and almost all, if not all, gang members are kind of by definition hardened criminals. You want to lower gun crime? Gangs. That's where you go. Criminals in general, gangs specifically. And the third are people who are mentally ill. There are so far, I don't believe, ever been any school shooters that have passed a psychiatric evaluation as mentally fit people. Who the fuck goes into a school to shoot it up full of kids if you're thinking straight? And let's say you're really upset. What is that going to solve? Nothing. And the police will absolutely kill you if you're not lucky and get arrested, where you will spend certainly the rest of your life in jail. A sane person would never do anything like that. So mentally ill people, criminals, and a subsection of criminals as gang members, if we simply take our policy efforts and focus on making sure these folks have as limited access to guns as possible, we win big at very relatively low costs. So the idea that gun crime is hard to narrow down and anyone can technically get a gun is absolutely true. Your grandmother can walk to Walmart and within 5 minutes own a registered or non-registered weapon that can kill tons of people. How likely is she to do that? Preposterously low in likelihood. So we have to focus on demographics. Number 4. This is the European argument, or the not from America argument, of saying, well, we can just wouldn't it be great if we just didn't have guns at all? There would be distinct advantages to that. And though potentially the liberties in the far future of society could be threatened, and potentially there would be downsides from other things like, criminals have more free reign to use their powers with non-gun weapons and just muscling people and all this other stuff. That could definitely be bad, some serious downsides, but there would be huge upsides on how much gun crime would reduce, because it would reduce gun crime almost or effectively to zero if there are no guns. But in the United States, we actually can get rid of all guns, but it would require an intense totalitarian sweep of every single American's home, their cellar, the floorboards, the straight Nazi type shit. because we're looking for all guns and people will hide them. They're going to bury them in the backyard. So it's actually very difficult to get rid of all guns. It's hypothetically possible. It would be an almost insurmountable effort. But before we even got to that, the mere beginning of such an effort has a non-zero decent chance in the United States to trigger civil war, because there will be people who own homes in many parts of America that will, when the police say, hey, it's time for us to come look at your guns, they're going to say, look, I got a 300-meter sight on my fucking driveway. Anyone pulls in here getting my guns, I don't give a fuck. I'm out. I'm dying for the red, white, and blue. Second Amendment, that's me. And anyone that comes down there, I'm going to kill. And I'm really good at killing. I practice all the time. There's tons of people, just regular Americans, that are way better than the average or even 90th percentile police officer at executing themselves with very, very powerful weaponry, because they have intent, they have training, and they have a proper sight system. You don't want to start that war, because that's a war everybody loses at a grand scale, massive instability. There are lower hanging fruit to clip off the tree. We don't have to go to that end. And there are many countries around the world where people have lots of guns, but there's no gang crime and all this other crazy stuff, and gun crime is teeny tiny. Switzerland is a perfect example. And as a matter of fact, in the entire state of Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, and I can list 10 other states, there's almost no gun crime, except almost everyone has an unreal powerful arsenal at home. It's just because demographically, they're never intending on committing any crime with their weapons. So, can we take all the guns away? We both probably don't need to do something like 98% of gun crime reduction. And also, if we tried to do it, it would probably cause civil war. And civil war is like the worst possible thing that can happen. And it's way, way worse than having to live with some gun crime. And I know that's a shitty trade-off. If we had a magic wand, sure, get rid of all the guns. That's a conversation we could have. But what I'm saying is we just straight up don't need to have it, because it's that unrealistic. Number 5, the idea that any registration is totalitarian. Prior to this, you may have thought I was a MAGA hat wearing Republican. Aha, now time to piss off the other side of the aisle. I'm not going to have any friends after a few of these conversations. Let's say we have a law that states something like the following. If you plan to take your gun out of your home, it has to be registered. That's the law. Here are a couple of implications of that law, are sort of subcategories. First, you get to keep as many unregistered guns in the home as you like. As long as they're in the home, who gives a shit? You're not killing anyone in your home, certainly that didn't just go up to your home unannounced. If you're caught outside the home with an unregistered gun, we assume you're going to use it to do some bad, and you're in really, really, really deep shit with the law. That will reinforce the fact that people who have guns in the home for civil defense and home defense will generally not take them out of the home unless they're registered. If even we register all the guns that people want to have access outside the home, that's like 400 million guns. It is highly unlikely that they're going to get them all. If you have registered guns, who's going to come get them? Your local sheriff? Very unlikely, because again, for that reason of like, you'll just shoot that guy as he's walking up your driveway and he knows it. He's not going to go and do that. Also, your sheriff is probably pro-Second Amendment anyway, so he just wouldn't do it on principle. Number 4, even if the government turns on us and wants all of our guns, you still have your Second Amendment stockpile in your basement at home, and it's unregistered, so they don't even know how many guns you have. At the end of the day, we just don't want that scenario of the feds coming to get your guns, because if that happens, man, real bad shit's going to go down. But gun registration, if we say, look, hey, let's be reasonable. Let's get all the guns registered that are allowed outside the home. That only gives us one big advantage. It allows us to tell you apart, registered gun owner, Second Amendment person, apart from a person who is a would-be, has-been, or current criminal. Because there are ways to do gun control insanely effectively with just the one law of if you are outside of your home, you have to have all of your weapons registered to you. And if they are not registered to you, you're in unbelievably deep shit. That is directly fighting the problem that causes crime with guns, which is almost all the crime is with unregistered weapons or weapons registered to somebody else, which is to say to the person who's found outside the home with them, unregistered. If we don't do any registration of weapons at all, it becomes very hard to get the guns away from the criminals. But if we do a registration of weapons that just leave the home and are you're planning on taking out of the home, it's a tractable issue, or at least much more tractable. I'm not putting my hand on this and saying this is exactly the way to do it, but just something to think about. It could not be the end of the world. It's some trade-off between some sort of civil liberties, maybe, and getting a massive, massive reduction in crime, which is what we want to do. Number 6, sort of myth, is that school shootings are the tip of the spear of the gun control issue. As a fraction of total violent gun crimes, they are incredibly rare. How rare are they? You hear about them on the news every single time they happen. You maybe have heard of 10 or 20 because that's how many have happened in the last, 10 years or something like that. It's by definition an insanely rare event. As a fraction of total people killed with guns, it is an incredibly low fraction. Now, here's the thing. Obviously, school shootings are still terrible, and I'll say more about them in just a bit, but it pays to know what you're up against. Because anytime you have people saying, you get a school shooting occurs, and it is always and everywhere tragic. You had a ton of people in the comments being like, we got to ban all guns. As a way to reduce school shootings, banning all guns, if you were purely just logic-centered robot, would be like the 15th thing you could possibly try. There's 14 other things or so that are just way better ideas, and they're not just better ideas and hypothesis. They actually reduce the probability of school shooting deaths way more than like starting to look at the gun control issue entirely. And most gun crime is not school shooting crime, and we care about all gun crime because we care about all people. We care about people equally if they're, I'm sorry, forgive me, little white kids in a school somewhere, or black kids in their home that's just getting sprayed, shot because they randomly had a gangster just standing outside their house and he just got shot and they get killed. If you look that up, the number of people dying in drive-by shootings gone wrong is like preposterously higher than school shootings or almost every other category of people getting killed in purposeful gun death. It's insane, and it's just as bad. We have to go after criminals. That's the thing, and most crime does not occur in a school. Sorry, really awkward to say all that, but it's just fucking true. All right, that all being said, what are some promising directions that I think could be just thought experiment ways to think about gun control for the future? How do we do this a little better? I have, I believe, 10 points. 10 points. First, these are proposals. If you've ever committed a violent crime, you can never own a gun ever again. Why? Because we can't trust you anymore. Remember, my whole thing is society is one giant team. You let the team down, you got to pay the price. I'm cool with that law. Because if you say no, but like, look, I really do need a gun, but like, okay, but you're a violent person. And they're like, well, not anymore. Like, oh, word up. Do we want to bet on you like being healed or whatever? I sure shit don't. You commit a violent crime and you're convicted for a violent crime, no more guns for you ever, ever again, because you're too high risk. Now, you specifically may never commit a crime again. You could be safe with guns, but how do we know that? We have to look at statistical aggregates, plain and simple. Number 2, if you are caught with an unregistered weapon outside of the home, you face enormous jail time if there's no compelling reason. Like, look, if somebody was transporting a gun in your car, they're related to you, they also use the car, blah, 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 and you have a good excuse and it adds up, you go to court and you settle it, hey, no big deal. Shit happens. We're not just like taking people off the street who have unregistered guns with no explanation, throwing them in jail. Absolutely not. But if you don't have a compelling reason, why do you have an unregistered weapon outside of the home? I bet it's to do bad with. Otherwise, it would be registered. Why wouldn't it be? So any gun you bring outside of your home has to be registered to you. If you are a past violent criminal and you're caught with an unregistered gun outside the home, it is my proposal that you do something like 20 years or more in jail. We need to get you off the street, period. Because you have committed violent crime in the past. You are showing us that you are flouting the law by having an unregistered weapon now in the present. Your probability compared to the average person in society of committing gun crime in the future just got 10,000 times higher than we would expect at a base rate. And so I'm cool with you just going away for your entirety of your young adult and middle adult life so that you're an old ass person when you get out of jail and you're just too damn old to harm anyone, probabilistically. Does this sound draconian? It sure does. Do you know what's more draconian? letting people who are previously convicted violent offenders have unregistered weapons and just being like, what is that, like 2 years, good behavior, you'll be out in 9 months. Out to do what? Statistically, those are the highest likelihood people to engage in violent acts. And why is that a surprise? What do you think they had an unregistered gun for as a previous felon? Crime. By definition, by the way, because you have to have a registered gun, it's a bad deal. Now, here's the thing. You're saying, look, Mike, this is crazy. You're throwing people away. You're throwing their lives away. 20 years plus in jail. That's nuts. Another video I'll make later is I think that jails should be incredibly hospitable places. No sexual assault in jail, minimize the corruption of guards and other prisoners as much as possible. I'm talking about some personal development type ish. People get the internet, they get TV, they get great food. The only thing they don't get is the ability to physically interact with people who are not in jail. Because, as I will demonstrate in a later video, the insanely vast majority of all crime is committed by a very small number of people that are repeat criminals. That's just what they do is crime. They have done it, they're doing it, and they're almost certainly going to do it, very likely to do it in the future. And if we know that about people, I'm not saying first strike, you're out. But a few strikes and you're gone. And I mean in jail, which is very hospitable, where you get to live out a huge fraction of your life in comfort, with dignity, with the amenities. Totally. You just can't leave because you're going to leave and probably hurt other people. I'll come back to that in a later talk because it's really, really, really important to understand. That is by far the easiest, most low-hanging fruit way to reduce all crime. Is you get people that are repeat criminals and you just take them the fuck off the street and you put them in a jail and prison or whatever you call it, a place where they can't interact with other members who they will very probabilistically try to hurt or kill or rape or steal from, because that's what they do. Now, it's a very jaundiced look, but it's also the most statistically accurate look. And if you're going to get in the comments, there is so far no empirically sound method to rehabilitate criminals. It's just never been demonstrated. And if you have any data on that, I'd love to see it in the comments. And it better not be one study from Finland, goddammit. All right. Number 3. So long as you exchange digital registry upon sale, my proposal is that you should be able to buy a gun from anyone, anywhere, anytime with zero friction. As if I was the government, I don't care where you got your gun or from who or how, as long as it was registered to someone before and it's registered to you after. That's all I care about. We just need to know if we catch you with a gun outside or the police pull you over and you have a gun, be like, is that your gun? Yep, sure is. Here's my, whatever gun registration card, however the fuck that works. And they go, oh, sweet, you're not a felon. Sweet. All right, good. Have fun. Go anywhere you want with your gun. Nobody cares. Interestingly enough, blockchain, the sort of technology behind crypto, is ideal for this purpose because it's sort of unalterable and it carries the timestamp of where a gun has been, where it is now, and its whole history. Really easy to confirm who owns it. So that's just an idea. Number 4, if at any point an institution declares you mentally unwell and mentally unfit to have a gun and a probability of turning violent is high, then your gun rights are rescinded until and unless you have an evaluation go another way. I don't think that you should necessarily have to have, I'm open on this, a psychiatric evaluation when you're trying to get a gun. I don't think that's a wise idea. It's just there's not enough throughput for that, at least with the current system and how it's arranged. So if you get a gun, you're assumed that you are not mentally unwell. But if you are ever shown to be mentally unwell, the gun registration system has to be updated. And if you ever try to buy another gun, it pops up and it says, nope, you can't do it. The easiest possible way to keep crazy people from getting guns. Flat out. It has its own trade-offs, of course. Who determines who is unwell and who is not? There's nuances there, but generally speaking, crazy people are crazy people, and they're not that hard to figure out. Number 5, if you have unregistered guns in your home, you can have as many unregistered guns in your home as you want, but they must all be for home defense or in case of crime or, civil liberty protection in case of government overreach. Whatever they are for, they are legal only on your property. If you want to take them off of your property and go anywhere with them, you have to get them registered, plain and simple. because we have one rule, and that rule is if you're out in public, not your home, with a weapon, we need to know who has that weapon. Not because we care about you. You, Mr. Legal Gun Owner, are not our enemy. And as soon as you have a registered gun anywhere, we're like, sweet, see ya, go anywhere you want. But if that gun happens to not be registered to you, or if we find out you're a convicted felon, that's our way to take you and pluck you off the street, and of course, with due procedures through the law, put you in jail for a really long, almost forever amount of time. Number 6, if someone commits a gun crime with your own gun, if that gun is registered to you, they have all their problem, not yours, because they clearly stole it or something or otherwise got it from you, and they bear full responsibility. However, if you're going to have a pool of unregistered guns in the home that is legal to own, if someone commits a gun crime with a gun from your at-home collection, you have to demonstrate to a very huge extent that you took great pains to prevent anyone from accessing the collection but you. Or you're in real deep shit also. Because a lot of the way crazy school shooter types get guns is like someone at home had a gun and they just took it. That means the gun was not secure. And the person who owned the gun at home was clearly not super interested in gun safety because like you could just get their gun however you want. Now, if that happens to you, if someone uses your gun to commit a crime, at the very least enormous fines, and potentially you actually can't ever own any guns ever again because we can't trust you anymore because you're not a good gun owner and you let people slip out with your guns. Digital safe, etc., or any gun you have out in the home, let's say you keep a shotgun under your bed, which is pretty reasonable depending on the area in which you live, you understand that that gun never gets separated from your sight or just close to where you are. And, you know, if you have to have that gun on you at home, that's how you feel safe, sweet. But you have to understand, and these laws need to be very clear and very public, if somebody else gets a hold of that gun and goes and does a gun crime, you are in real deep shit as well as they are. So this encourages people highly to, if they're going to have guns in their home, secure them or keep them on their person to prevent them from getting out, et cetera, et cetera. Here's a fun one. Point number 7. I believe that the police should be able to easily get a warrant, or it should be an auto warrant, to search your person or vehicle for guns, no matter where you are, unless it's in your home. And then the rule applies that you don't even have to have registered guns at your home. You can have fuck all if you want. Home search, I think, is insanely private and should be really difficult to get a warrant for the police to search your home. Also, it's your home, because kind of who gives a shit what you're doing there? Who are you going to kill at your home? Nobody. If you are out and about, walking around, or if you are driving your car, you get pulled over, the police should have an easy time searching your car for guns. Let's thread this out. Let's say they find a gun that's registered to you. They go, is this your gun? You go, yep. They look it up. They go, yep. See ya. Let's say they find a gun that is not registered to you. You are going to booking and you are getting a fucking lawyer because you have some serious explaining to do. Because right now, it kind of looks like you're a criminal intent on using this literally illegal gun for, things illegal guns are used for. I don't know, like crime. If the police are not able to search your person or vehicle, how are they supposed to find all of these illegal guns? I want the police to have an easy job searching anyone they want that's out in public, in their vehicle or they're not. And if they have legal guns, amazing. I love that model. Looking for that next model next year, the 6 Hour announced it as a replacement. I love it. Great. Have a good time. Guy drives off. But if it's an illegal gun, holy shit, you're getting weapons drawn on you. You're going somewhere to talk to a lawyer because you're in a real bad place. If this is public knowledge and this is practiced this way in society, the next time you think you're going to get a gun to go intimidate someone or to mug someone or rob someone, you had better not run into any police. And that last time you'll be running into the police for 20 fucking years because you're just off the street. Is we cannot have people currently in many municipalities, including some of the worst inner city crime zones in America, if you get caught with an illegal gun, it's kind of like a nuanced thing where it depends on your record and sometimes doesn't even, and you can parole out and good behavior and this and that, or the prison just got too crowded so they let you go. Happens all the time. No more. You get caught with an illegal gun, you're out of the game. Period. Huge, huge deal. Now, here's the thing. Won't the police lie and plant guns on people? First of all, they almost never do that. It's insanely rare. But they could, and they have before, and they will in the future. Here's the deal. My proposal here. All such interactions where the police are searching you to see what kind of guns you have on your person or on your vehicle, the police need to have at least one functioning body cam for the entire duration of the stop. This, with the technology we have in the 2020s, is preposterously easy. And the body cam makes a lot of shit really, really clear. Because the body cam shows us exactly what happens. Did the police follow procedure? Was the gun planted or some crazy shit like that? Because if it was, it's going to be really hard to get body cam footage of the entire situation. That is, the cop pulls you over, body cam is on. Cop walks out, body cam is on. Cop looks in your trunk, gun discovered. What, did the cop pull you over earlier? And it's sort of like said, hey, sit there and I'll shoot you and I'm going to pull back and turn on my camera. Hell no, that's highly unlikely. It does not guarantee anything, but it reduces the probability substantially. I also think that if there is not a full body cam stream, if there's a malfunction or a glitch or some of the stream isn't available, all the charges are categorically dropped because who knows what would have happened. My view is this. You take every police officer in the United States, as soon as they check in for their shift, body cam turns on. As soon as they check out, body cam turns off. It should be that simple. Put put cameras in all the cop cars in multiple angles. Every Tesla has like 18 cameras. We can do this on a cop car. And I've got all kinds of stuff later to say about how I think police in sensitive situations especially should probably have like micro drones flying around them with also cameras. Because criminals like to claim that police are doing bad things and inappropriate things. And I want to believe them if there is evidence. And if it's on the burden of the police to demonstrate that they have cam footage of everything, then they should have it. And if they don't, then we don't trust the police. Fuck the police. But if the cop's saying, look, this is what happened, here's full stream body cam footage from beginning of the interaction to the end, well, yeah, like, looks like you're a criminal and the police are right, which they're right 99% of the time, by the way, as a heads up. All right. Point number 8, to address the school shooting situation with 2 points. It's not, again, fractionally, it's a very rare thing, but I felt like I had to address it in some case. Schools, I think, should be free to hire armed security if the school board decides that is a good idea. What could this look like? Deep psychological vetting for the people that get the job. You don't want a crazy asshole with a gun in the school. That's a bad idea. Prior police or military experience highly valued. There's tons of former police folks. There's tons of veterans that could use a job. Great job. Position them, I'm no tactic expert, but you position them just inside of the main entrance of a school. Outside, you're easy picking for a shooter. Inside, it's very difficult to even see indoors. And if someone's looking like this with a gun, then the guy inside can get the first shot off or something like that. And I don't think this needs to be a universal, like all schools have this. All schools have armed guards. I don't think that's necessarily a solution. But I think it should be allowed to be legal. And then your school should have to explain to you as a parent or concerned citizen why they don't think your kids need protection. And they could have compelling reasons. I say, look, the probability of a school shooting is tiny. Yes, yes. This armed guard costs $80,000 a year. Yes, yes. Could we spend that $80,000 a year in some better way to enrich your kid's life? Like, yeah. And there are parents that would be like, yes, I'm logical enough to understand that. And there are parents that are like, what are you, crazy? You're going to say like getting 3 extra tubas for band is more important than keeping our kids safe? And then you let the demographics of the school decide by majority vote or whatever. And then all of a sudden the school is either like, yeah, we're getting a few armed guards or we're not. But I don't think it should be a universal policy because, to be honest, some schools, it's going to be hard to justify the expense. There are schools in America that will never, ever have a school shooter. And there are schools in America that, like, the chance is very low, but it's up there. Number 9, schools should consider auto lock bulletproof doors. Again, should consider, not necessarily as a matter of rule. In an active shooter scenario, all the doors lock instantly. Even hallway partitions potentially can come down or slide through. And then that really limits the ability of the individual to walk around and shoot a bunch of people, which is usually how school shootings happen. Damage is minimized. And, the auto lock can be disabled within a room, but not from outside of a room. So that way, like, if there's a fire or something like that, you can get the job done. There's all kinds of very nuanced ways that are very effective to make the system happen. And again, if your school chooses not to install these systems, They should have to explain to you as the parent why they chose not to install these systems. And then if parents really want safer schools with security and better infrastructure, then there's sort of supply and demand going to get those schools. And if they don't want safer schools, then they don't get them. And if you're a parent that is sending their kid to a school you no longer think is safe, you should have all the freedom to move your child to another school. Because a lot of the times we get these debates with people like, well, schools should have armed guards. And someone's like, well, that's crazy. I don't want my kids around some psycho ex-military guy with a gun. And it's like, what? Just sounds like you guys need to go to different schools. And there's not anything wrong with it. Number 10, the legal landscape needs to allow the development of highly effective defensive non-lethals. Some kind of future weapon type shit. Because by the way, guys, it's 2023. It's already the future. If someone is making me feel unsafe and they're attacking me or they have a gun or I'm getting mugged, maybe I should have a gun that shoots some kind of nano net that goes poof and just like encloses them completely and they fall down. And like that, good luck getting out of that. And you run away. Some kind of sound device, microwave device. There's tons of these hypotheticals and actually tested devices that are usually not, normal citizens are not allowed to carry them. In some places you're allowed to have a gun, but you're not allowed to carry a bunch of different non-lethals. There are actually municipalities in the United States where like you're not even allowed to have pepper spray, which is insane. This pepper spray use is almost purely defensive. So are you against defense? Crazy. If non-lethals become so high-tech and so effective, you can come in later and say, listen, this is a dangerous neighborhood, and it's so dangerous that no one's allowed to have a gun. If you say that when defensive non-lethals are really powerful, it's not going to be a big deal because someone's going to be like, fuck it, I don't need a gun. I'll get a non-lethal. I'll never be in trouble because I can just like zap all these guys with electricity. They'll fall down and then I'm out and they're still picking themselves up off the floor. Nobody dies, but I'm safe. But if in many cities in the United States, precisely the places where gun crime is the highest, you also have arcane laws against all sorts of non-lethals and their deployment. Why? It's like you're designing a system of laws that benefits criminals at the expense of regular people that are non-criminal. So yeah, I'm all for, getting rid of guns in really dangerous neighborhoods through even ways that maybe don't agree with liberty a ton, but I gotta have some alternatives. Regular people have to be able to protect themselves robustly. Otherwise, the conversation is a non-starter. If someone says to me like, hey, Mike, you're going to go to Southside Chicago. Do you want a gun? Yeah, fuck yeah, I want a gun. But like, well, why? You're contributing to gun crime. I will contribute to gun crime real fast if somebody pulls up on me the wrong way because I know they have a gun. And I know they're probably going to use it on me because that's what they do in neighborhoods like that. I know. It's really crazy to admit. Go to Southside Chicago. Try to find out for yourself. So when people say, a lot of people, from Europe or other places where they don't have as much crime, they'll come in and be like, oh, there's no legal guns in Sweden. Sweet. I've been to Sweden. There's no fucking crime in Sweden. I'm not trying to go to Sweden and say, hey, you guys need 100 guns per capita. No guns. It's great. I love Sweden. I love all those places. But no legal guns for non-felonious people, for people who are not criminals, for people who are legally registered, can legally register a weapon. Why shouldn't they have legal guns in Chicago? A lot of these major cities in America, the ability to own a gun legally is like infinitesimally small or just doesn't exist, but everyone has an illegal gun. And by everyone, I mean mostly criminals. So you have the criminals have almost all the power because the laws that against search and seizure and all that stuff, you can't just pull someone over, you can't just search them. Why? Why not? What's wrong with the police searching you? You got something to hide? You probably do. That's bad. That means you're probably a criminal. That means we need to find you and get you the fuck out. So I'm all for, if you live in the inner city, you should have a legal recourse to own guns because that probably on the net balance reduces crime because now the people trying to rob you or mug you, they know you might have a gun. But if I'm a criminal in the inner city in the United States today and I look at someone that looks like an upstanding citizen, they look like not a criminal, they look like a victim to me. They're going to be my victim real soon because I know they don't have a gun because it's illegal to have a gun in New York City. But I have one. But I don't care. I'm a criminal. It's what I do. But if I think they have a gun, I don't know. I might rethink it. So huge emphasis on developing non-lethals before even starting that conversation. Or at the very least, taking the crime in those neighborhoods and vastly reducing it. They'll tell people like, oh, it's not good for Chicago to have like tons of guns in it. Like the legal gun ownership should not be allowed because those guns eventually filter in to illegal guns. But there's a lot of crime. So if I'm going to live there, I want some protection. What do you have for me for protection? And then, by the way, call the police doesn't work because you call the police almost always after the crime has occurred, not before. What are you, prescient or some shit like that? It doesn't work like that. So leave the guns to registered guns to people who are legally owning them in the city. I'm all for that. At the same time, develop initiatives to make non-lethals even more powerful than guns in diffusing situations of danger. And then, hey, then make guns illegal in the city. Sweet, I don't care, quote unquote, just for argument's sake. But at the same time, we should be taking violent crime in the city and going down so low that the people that want legal guns just look like gun nut crazies. And then they're easy to argue against. But when someone's like, hey man, I have my rights, I have my gun, you're like, don't worry about it. And then they live in Chicago and you're like, I guess worry about it. It's a non-starter. All right. So I'll have more videos in the future. That was that. About related issues. Many more, including police oversight, body cameras and drones and things like that, and how much police power should have, or how much power the police should have versus how restrained they should be. Crime reduction. Criminology is a hell of a thing. Hopefully I don't get canceled for it, but it's gnarly. But also there are a lot of really clear answers on how to really radically reduce crime while not really touching civil liberties almost at all. Prison reform, I have tons of ideas on that I'll be sharing with you. A quick preview I sort of already made was I think prisons should be really nice places. Punishment doesn't work so well. The biggest advantage of a prison is it takes people who don't play well in the sandbox, the rest of society, and it puts them away into their own place where they can't hurt others. That's just a fact of reality. I wish it was different. I wish that there was more traction on being able to rehabilitate people. But so far it hasn't worked. We have good reasons to believe why it can't work. On these topics and many more, my reasoning will always try to be the following things. Outcome-oriented. We all want to see a similar goal. There's nobody for high crime. We want the crime to go down. How do we make it go down? My views will be cost-benefit centered. There are benefits to certain policies, but all policies have costs. So if we have a huge benefit and a huge cost, if we have a decent benefit but a very small cost, it starts to look pretty good, and everything in between. Most of my policy proposals and ideas will be marginal. They make things better or worse. Well, ideally better. Ideal solutions are rare. So if you're saying, well, I like your solution, but what about this? I'll be like, yeah, we're just going to take that on the chin. You're like, I don't know, man. We could do better. Okay, do better. Well, I can't come up with any ideas. Sweet. So while you're stewing on ideas, we're going to do the next best thing. We work on the margins. That's real life. And also, we're going to take the long view. Not just what the intentions of this policy are, but what happens with the implementation of the policy, mixing in with people's expectations and behaviors 6 months down the road, a year down the road, 10 years down the road, etc. If we take all of that into our thinking process, at the end result, we take all the policies that we could have had and we shuffle off a bunch of them that don't meet these needs, and then we get down to a very small subsection of policies, all of which now start to seem very reasonable. And then, first of all, we can choose from them. And second of all, any one of them is so much better than anything we could have pulled out randomly or just been sort of drawn to by our political affiliation, which is another way of saying emotion for no reason at all. All right. Well, that was less fun than most of the other videos. I don't enjoy a ton talking about this topic, but I see these issues being misinterpreted and misrepresented so much, I had to say something. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. See you next time.